I think that I'm hoping is that we all have the ability to set a goal, and as I said earlier, revolution is the action. We all have the ability to set a goal. And I think the question or the answer to what's a revolution stems from how do I get to this goal? The revolution maybe simply is that I need to read this book on what it looks like to be emotionally intelligent.
Hello, everybody. I'm Greg Tomczyk. Welcome to the Connected Mindset Podcast, where each week we bring you the stories to better connect with the world around you. Let's dive into this week's podcast. Charles Corprew, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, glad you're here, man. One of the ways we like to start the show is so the audience can get a little bit more to know about you and your background, what brings you here, is what mission are you on? What are you hoping the people listening in today walk away with?
Yeah, it's a great question. I probably have a couple of missions. And I think at the core of who I am, and particularly for the last almost 15 years now, my mission is to get people to answer what I think is the most thought-provoking question of their life. What's your revolution? And for me, when we think of revolution, particularly historically, we think about seismic change, people, having uprisings and overthrowing governments or overthrowing regimes or philosophical things that don't fit. For me, revolution is around the aspect of how do we actually make seismic personal change in our lives, and that we move that change into a communal or global aspect. And I tell this story that, ironically, I tell this story because I was talking to a friend this morning. Her name is Jessica Klein, and she is the founder and CEO of Council Table. And we were talking about how things are downloaded to us, unconsciously. And this story of how What's a Revolution came about, literally, and I'll tell it quickly, is I was sitting at graduation from Tulane University in 2011. I got my doctorate there and in psychological science. And I wasn't going to go to graduation. And because we had our hooding ceremony a couple days before, and that's kind of like the big thing. But Stevie Wonder was at graduation.
Really?
And any graduation in New Orleans is an event. It's a show. And so, you're giving an honorary doctorate to one of the greatest performers and singers of all time. So I was like, I'm going to go. But before him, Tom Friedman, New York Times columnist, Pulitzer Prize winner, came on. And he began to juxtapose what was going on in Tahrir Square in Egypt in 2011, how the students were using Facebook and Instagram at the time and Twitter to really galvanize, to come together because they wanted to overthrow Hosni Mubarak, the long-time dictator in Egypt. But then he began to tell the story of how the civil rights movement and Rosa Parks and Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X came together to really quell the injustices that were going on in America. And he said, he was like, everyone has a revolution.
Wow, yeah.
And there it was, downloaded to me right there. And I began asking myself, well, Charles, what's your revolution? You're moving into this aspect of, moving from Mr. Corprew to Dr. Corprew. And what are you going to do with that? And I remember testing it out from an entrepreneurial perspective with my students that I was going to teach, asking them as they were moving through their courses, well, what's your revolution? What are you going to do with this degree? And it's proliferated. So I've been on that mission of asking that question to people for so long that that's who I am. When people, I've been in airports across the world, like, you're the revolution guy. You're the one asking this question. So that's my primary mission.
Yeah, questions are the best answers.
Yeah.
Oftentimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think we're all seeking the answers, but we don't typically know what questions to ask. And I think it's such a profound question. I'm curious, before you got that download, did you know what your revolution was? Or did it take you time once you heard that question of everybody individually has a revolution, then you started asking yourself the question to go find what that revolution could be?
Right. It's a great question. It is a great question. I thought I had the answer to that question. I had been working with, I was a school teacher. I taught at Great Neck Middle. I taught at Greenwood High School. I was a baseball coach. I was a mentor. And I've been specifically working with young Black boys
Mm-hmm.
and ensuring that they had a road to get to where I was at that time. I was, I've been successful, I've been granted opportunities. So I thought teaching was one of the best jobs in the world. I still do. The impact, the ability to impart your wisdom and knowledge on young, aspiring minds. And so when I asked that question, I was like, well, it is to continue to move young Black boys into this space of resilience, success, positive thinking, and positive experiences. And that was my revolution. At the time, I was like, okay, you've got it. And so now I'm moving into this professorship, and I I continued like pontificating and writing and publishing about the experiences of boys and men of color. Like, how do we pontificate and proliferate their experiences out to the world?
Mm-hmm.
But it changed. It shifted over time. It wasn't, I began to see that the impact of men's health, as we've talked about previously, was important, not just for young Black boys, but for everybody, right? As we say on my own podcast, the What's a Revolution show, it's a show for men and the people who love them. And that's the interesting piece, is that to understand the lived experiences of all people, all humanity, and particularly men at this point in time, is that those folks also need to know, who surround us, who love us, who are a part of our lives, they also need to know the struggles, the joys, the triumphs, the challenges that we're going through from a mental health perspective or a physical health perspective, a career-wise perspective. And I think if we do that, we can uplift all people, by understanding each other. And I just specifically talk about men's health. And so it has shifted. It has moved from just young Black boys into this larger, I don't want to say monolith because it's very diverse, but this conversation around what does men's health look like, and how can we all be involved in really making a successful opportunities and lifestyle for men who are just one piece of our humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the people that love them as well, because I think one of the biggest points of friction I've faced through the different transitions I've went through is the people that really want to support me being able to communicate what I'm going through so that we can support each other throughout that journey. Because if I'm feeling friction, they're probably feeling the friction that I'm giving off. And I think that's a hard piece for people as they're going through transition, whether it's an identity shift or a career shift. I know for me, when I'm going through transition, I kind of batten down the hatches and I get more rigid with my routine, where I'm like, I need to wake up at this time. I need to do this run. I need to do this exercise. And that impacts a lot of the people around me.
Yes.
And I think I'm healthy because I'm doing my routine. I feel good about it. But it seems like everything around me gets more rocky and more friction because the people around me don't know how to support me during that rigidity. So I love that you do the people that love them as well, because we can feel healthy but not be cultivating the relationships at the same time.
Yeah, it's very interesting you say that, because I what I've learned is that when I'm going through something, I can't be afraid to communicate that, particularly to the people that love me. And I'm always like, be curious about what's going on with me. And then if I'm not being curious about what's going on with you, make sure that you say, ask questions, because we can assume very, very quickly and interpret. The mind goes to, okay, I've got this heuristic, let me interpret someone's behavior, which that's based on our own experience. And so what I have learned is that if I don't go in with curiosity, I've created a story that may not be true, and then I'm reacting on a story that may not be true. And so what I try to do in my relationships is say, if I'm going through something, let me make sure that I'm communicating to those people that love me and that I trust them and they trust me. I'm going through this. This is how my behavior may change. This is the support that I need during this period of time. I may not need anything. I may just need you to sit in a room and be quiet with me, put your leg on me, and watch TV with me, because I'm an introvert. And that's what I may need. But if I'm not communicating that, and then you're sitting next to me and you're like just going in and I'm looking at you with that glazed gloss, like, please stop talking. But then it's my fault because I haven't communicated to you that I just need this time. I just need you to be in space with me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big thing. And I think many of us as men are not taught to be over communicators. No. Just say the thing you need to say, or not even say it at all. Just make the assumption like, don't bother me, leave me alone. Mm-hmm. And then when I erupt because you've now done things that have triggered me or crossed the boundary and I didn't tell you, it's still my responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I think that's that accountability piece.
Yeah, exactly.
That oftentimes we point the finger that person that loves us doesn't know how to support us, so it's on them.
Yes.
And I know I had a high school coach that said transfer of blame is unacceptable. And I didn't know what it meant at the time, but as I evolved in my baseball career and then I got into business, I realized that when things got hard, people were like looking for the shiny object to point to and blame it on them versus saying, like, it's me and I'm taking accountability. Even if it's not fully on me, it's on the team here. If everybody takes accountability for their own thing and collectively comes together, I think it's a better result.
It is. I totally agree. There's a book that I love. It's called Conscious Leadership from the Conscious Leaders Group. And the first principle is 15 commitments of conscious leadership. Mm-hmm. And the first commitment is 100% responsibility. It is a wonderful thing. And when I started, and I have to give credence to my CEO at Camelback Ventures, Aaron Walker. It was a book that our staff read. And it was something around the values that we instilled in the organization is that there's a collective responsibility that happens. There are no heroes, there are no villains, there are no victims if we all think about what is our responsibility in getting to an outcome. Mm-hmm. And if we can all take that 100% responsibility, understanding that we were successful because we all took accountable, or we were not successful, but there's still 100% responsibility in that. And that not only shifted my professional life, it shifted my personal life. Like, you can't make me feel anything. I am responsible for my feelings. I am responsible for my actions. And that was a revolution there. I always think about revolutions are actions. The goal was, if the goal is to be a better human or to show it better, what's the revolution is the action. That, taking 100% responsibility was probably one of the greatest revolutions of my life.
Yeah, when you think about health, and I want to get into the sports piece and the competition piece, how that's impacted you. Yeah. But when you think about holistic health or Ben's health, and I'm introverted as well, and I think for me, health feels very internalized. Like I know when I feel healthy, and I know when we think about like extroverts, they feel healthy when the external world is kosher and in a good state. And a lot of that comes with communication.
Those people.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so I think about, how much of the health is internal versus external. I think, life's an inside job. I think we, like you said, people were collectively thinking about these revolutions as communities, as big groups that were going against some type of regime, or they were going to fight for something that they collectively believed in. But when you had that download of, I have a revolution too inside myself that I need to figure out. I think about the battle between the internal and external a little bit, and figuring out, where do I spend, my next minute, or how do I spend that next thought or curiosity? Is it curiosity about somebody else, or going internal and kind of saying, what sparks my curiosity? What's that next question I should ask myself or somebody else?
Right. It is. And we talk about on the show, and many of my guests have talked about that, their greatest work, like these are luminaries in their fields, but their greatest work began with themselves. And when you can go within, go really, really deep to understand, and oftentimes the body, not even oftentimes, I think it's, we'll say 99% of the time, the body will give you cues around what's going on internally, whether it's physiologically or psychologically. The body will give you cues. It's just our job to actually pay attention to those things. Being empathetic, actually, and sympathetic with yourself is one of those great cues, because we are always thinking about how do we be empathetic with someone else, but giving ourselves grace. Giving ourselves grace is one of those things. Like, I'm going through something, and it's okay. And then figuring out, well, why am I going through this aspect or this thing or this feeling? Again, my friend Jessica and I were talking this morning on, we have cathartic walks, where it's just our ability to kind of just release the things that are going on in our lives. And I think everybody needs those people to help you even go deeper, as you just said. And one of the strategies that she was talking about this morning, she's like, we're so immersed in our minds. And when we feel something and we know something consciously that is going on, release the mind and actually allow the heart to come in. And that is not something that men are taught. It is not. It is not something to say, wait a minute, because we're thinkers. We're socialized to be thinkers. We're leaders. That mind should, I should go deep. I should be able to think through and critically analyze and come up with a solution. And we lose that aspect of the heart. And that's what she was saying. She was like, move away from your mind, because the mind is going to give you all the strategies, and allow the heart to move into the space and say, this is why I'm feeling this way. And I think that internal aspect is, if you can figure out what's going on internally and allowing your heart to feel that, you can then move into the mind and allow the mind to come up with a strategy. If you want to move through the space, the mind you might say, I need to feel this all the way through and actually learn from this. And that's another thing from the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. It is feel your feelings all the way through, because there's a learning aspect to it. Yeah.
I think we cut it off when we're ready to turn it off. We feel like it's either too hard or we've already solved it. And we flip the switch off, and we haven't seen it all the way through. I think that's things kick in of, don't be so emotional. Or somebody came on the show recently and said, Greg, what are you too much of? Or what has somebody told you that you're too much of?
Right.
And I think a lot of people get told you're not emotional enough, or you're too emotional, or you're too logical. And that gets wired into our brain of, can we be both? Can we be logical and emotional?
Right.
And figure out what that balance or equation looks like for us, and uniquely use them. And I think we like black or white because we like to either be emotional or we like to be logical, and you can only be one or the other.
Right.
Because it's easier for the mind to label yourself as one thing.
Right.
When it comes to the way we process things. And I think that can set people up for failure when they don't see other people that are using their heart and their mind, because they're one or the other.
Yeah. So. That both and aspect is critical. You can be logical and emotional. And as we're seeing with the tenacious conversations that we're having across the world, in our country. And in my opinion, we've become so black and white, and that logic and emotion have become enemies, in my opinion. Right. And particularly if you're a man and showing emotion, that typically in some cultures is seen as weakness. And I see it as one of our greatest strengths, because I think if we, particularly, as some of the leaders, not all of the leaders, but some of the leaders in rooms, we need to bring our emotions into it. We need to say, I can understand what my employees are going through, and then make, shifts in how I even lead. For instance, I'm thinking, with one of my current employees and how they navigate through life and through their lens. And I remember being really rigid in the beginning about how I was going to lead this employee. I was like, no, this is like, you're going the wrong direction. This is the wrong direction, and I need to move you back. And I remember this person saying, like, I'm going to get to the same road, but I want you to trust me that I might take a different pathway to get there. And I'm also dealing with X, Y, and Z that takes me to the other road to get to the outcome that you're looking for. And I finally had to say, I'm going to trust you. Now that, if we don't get there, that's another conversation.
Yeah.
But to then be empathetic, like, okay, you're going through this and you also have a different way of thinking. You also have a different operational mindset that I just may not have. To trust that you can get to this outcome is huge. And now I have to believe in myself to let go of my way of thinking and my way of doing things and say, okay, I'm going to give you the bandwidth and the leeway and the space to do this. That and I was like, because my business partner was like, yeah, that's really mature of you. I was like, it took me a lot to get there. It took me a lot to get there. But I think that was an example for me, looking at how other leaders were bringing their emotion into the space and allowing them to be empathetic and sympathetic of their employees. And they're seeing greater reward and greater outcomes.
Have you come across somebody whose revolution is on that like culture point of how I think as humans we're complex but simple at the same time?
Yeah.
Which I think makes life, I wouldn't say counterintuitive, but it makes it somewhat confusing as we kind of wake up, go out into the world. Everybody's a little bit different. Have you had anybody whose revolution is on how do people connect with each other on the same playing field? Because I remember like walking on the baseball field, we were all in the same dirt, we were all in the same grass. So there was a feeling, and I feel this when I think about the word connection, and that was one of the reasons I started the show. When I felt like I was walking on the field, no matter where we came from, or you know, whether we were coming from the Dominican or we were coming from Virginia or wherever it was, we just kind of saw eye to eye and had that the unspoken connection of we're feeling the same thing, so that we have a commonality that we're able to relate on.
Right.
And it simplified things for the mind. And I saw it with people and how they thought. And when we navigate life, it seems like we're all on kind of we're on different levels of things, not necessarily success or failure, wherever we're at, but whatever we're going through, we're either lifted up or we're, you know, going through something that's putting us down. And I think that makes life hard as you go back to that culture piece of dealing with teams. It's that ability to know we're on different levels potentially, but we're still going after the same outcome. And that culture piece is difficult.
It is. And so the question was, have I seen somebody on like to so be revolutionary in their mindset where they're galvanizing and bringing folks together?
Yeah.
And the counterintuitive answer was, is to give you my high school principal, Mr. Wiley French. I went to Green Run High School back in the late 80s. And Green Run High School was one of the most prolific schools in the region, in the state. One, just giving you a little backstory, and the story that I know is that the school board at the time created, Green Run was built in 1979. At some point, they decided to bus kids from College Park, you know where College, that area, down Providence Road, past Kimsville Road, where you could have taken an easy left, or easy left to go to Kimsville High School. But they bust the kids from College Park all the way down Providence, to Independence, to Green Run. Well, we were a school that was built for, I want to say 1,700 kids. There were 3,300 of us in one school during that period of time. We won everything. I don't know where you went to high school, but we won. Yeah, we used to beat the trash out of y'all. But we did that with everybody because we had so many people. You think about, you have 3,300 students. Yeah, there's a host of athletes in everything. Yeah. I used to say, we would win at forensics because we were so good. But we had a principal, Mr. Wiley French, who was one of those folks that I think was well ahead of his time. And he saw a school that was a third Filipino, a third Black, and a third white in the late 80s. And you think about this, these various cultures, and, we are, 20 years outside of the civil rights movement. Think about that short period of time, right? Yeah. And he brought in teachers who wanted to be a part of our lives. not, not just to say you walk into my classroom and I'm your teacher, but they dug down and wanted to be a part of our lives. They were at every sporting event. They were at, cultural events. They had clubs and different things. The teachers bought into us. I still talk to, at 54, I still talk to my teachers who are now in their 70s, but he built a culture where people saw each other and saw their humanity coming together as teachers and administrators, and then pouring into students. My worldview was shaped in those 3 years at Green Run High School, how I saw the world, how I moved out into JMU, how I moved out into my first teaching stint, how I moved into Norfolk State to get my first graduate degrees, how I moved in my professorship were shaped at Green Run High School back in the late 80s because we had a leader who saw something that the school board didn't see, something that the state didn't see, that I have an amalgamation of students and teachers that can come together and shift the dynamic of their lives. The class of 8 and 9, and I have to say this, because, any stallion, because we're stallions for life, but the class of 89 are some of the most prolific leaders in this country. At one point in time, in 89, I was the superintendent of schools for Virginia Beach, Dr. Aaron Spence. Yeah. We have done so much in this country. If you look at the leaders from our class all over the country, but it was because of the teachers and because of Mr. Wiley French that we walked out with a worldview that, one, we would see the humanity of people, and two, that we could do anything well. And that was the thing. I was just, nobody would say Charles Corprew was going to be Dr. Corprew. I was a C student, but I walked out of there knowing I could get it. And to be as successful as I am at this point in my life, it's, my parents were extremely successful, but I also had teachers and administrators who believed in me, who said, you know what, you can do a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people think that's the parents' job to make the kids see that. And I think we spend a lot of time traditionally in the public school system. We spend more time there than we do at home.
Yeah, exactly.
Potentially.
Yeah, exactly. And teachers have, shout out to Jennifer Griffin, Jennifer Easton now, who was a longtime friend, who's been at Green Run High School since the early 2000s. Mr. Joyner was, my government teacher when I was at high school, and I was in high school. I went back and taught at Green Run for 5 years. He was my department head. He was still there. One of the most prolific and influential individuals of my life. Teachers shape who we are. They have the ability because we spend so much time with them. If you're a good teacher, the impact that you have on a child's life is immeasurable.
It is. Yeah, that's that mentorship we all need.
Yeah.
Do you look back and think about, did Mr. French attract the teachers, or did he pick teachers based off of those qualities of being able to see the person, right? See the human being, not just the human doing, going to class and, demanding a good grade, but saying maybe they're not getting the grade because they're going through something. So having that curiosity.
Yes.
And I think that's, not everybody has that.
No, not everybody has that. I want to hope that, he went out and hand selected the folks. Yeah. But I also know that he probably instilled, if you didn't buy into that mindset, this probably is not the place for you. Yeah. And I remember, I can't remember this teacher's name. She was never my teacher. She was my best friend's math teacher. But I saw how she treated him. And so I began a relationship with her just by speaking to her. She didn't know me. She was never my teacher. But we began a relationship that, proliferated over 3 years just from me speaking to her and her saying, I see you with Quince Griffin. He's a pretty good dude. You know what I'm saying?
Association.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to think that you're a pretty good dude, and I'm going to give you a piece of me. That was what that culture was. So I think that he instilled into that culture, like, we're going to buy into our students, even if they're not yours. And that's big. That's huge. So I'm going to hope. I don't know. I don't know how the sausage was made, but I'm going to hope that's what happened.
Yeah, the end product sounds like amazing and impactful.
It was so much so that I go to every home football game, every home basketball game. I am the most obnoxious fan.
Yeah.
I still have my my baseball uniform, my basketball uniform, all the things still at the house. I have so much Green Run paraphernalia that is ridiculous. My mom's like, you need to get rid of something. No,
Yeah.
I can't. I mean, I don't wear it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it is ingrained in me, stallion for life. And that worldview and that belief, I want to give back as much to that school as is given to me over the last 35 years.
I love that. The sense of pride, the sense of, I want to give back a piece of me to people that, really poured into me when I needed it most, when I was trying to, really figure out the world. And what I'm curious about, because I know a lot of the listeners are either transitioning to a new career or they're leading an organization and trying to make things a little bit more simple, a little bit more certain, is when these teachers would give a piece of themselves, do you feel like it was them giving wisdom and advice, or was it asking questions that helped you get to that end point? Because I think when we feel like we have wisdom that somebody needs, sometimes we just want to dump it all on them and say, you need to do this. And we were talking about that before the show. It's like, this is what I feel is best, and you need to do this to get through what you're currently going through, versus finding the right question. Maybe it's what's your revolution, or finding that right question to ask them to kind of help, not necessarily lead the witness, but lead them to a point where where they get the breakthrough and what we call, that kind of connected moment for themselves, and asking them the question versus telling them what you believe is their answer.
Yeah, I'm sure that it's probably a bit of both. I remember sitting in Miss Norton's class, my Algebra 2 class, and she gave me a shot one day. Literally, she went around the room asking folks where they were going to go to college, and I was like, Duke. I want to go to Duke. Nice. And the reason why I wanted to go to Duke wasn't about their academic prowess. It's because I've been a Duke Blue Devil basketball fan since 1986. And so I was like, I want to go to Duke. I want to go to Duke. And she gave me a shot. She was like, well, if you keep performing in my Algebra 2 class like you're doing right now, you'll never get into Duke. Really? Yes. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So, and for me to be able to tell you that story 37 years later, you see the impact that she had on me. I had tremendous respect for who she hopefully is. I don't, and was to me at the time. And just being able to hear that. But I also had Miss Tucker and Mr. Joyner and Miss Lewis and all of them imparting wisdom. Yeah. I remember I became a history major when I went to James Madison because of Miss Tucker and Mr. Joyner, because they were so influential in, my love of history was because of them. And I was like, oh, I want to learn more about, and I love being a history major. I don't use it now, but I love that. And that love for that genre, that sector of education was because of them.
Yeah. Yeah, they planted the seed.
Yeah, they planted a huge seed.
With that experience, I want to kind of go down the competitive nature and how much you feel sports has impacted the approach you take to one life, your personal life, but also how you bring that into impacting people, which I think of business as the impact we have on the collective but we feel it internally first. We feel it personally, and then we bring that out, through some type of business that creates value.
Yeah. It's a great question. I just returned from the French Open. Played tennis growing up, recreationally, played baseball, at Green Run, at Princess Anne Junior High School at the time, and have played sports. Basically, I've played sports all my life. And what sports has given me, is the ability to see how people can come together and work synergistically when it comes together. And I've not only played, but I've coached. And to see how when you bring culture, because culture is just not about business. Culture is about how people come together and work and live and play together. And what I've seen, particularly from when I play or when I coach, it wasn't always about having a team of stars. It was about a team of people who could work together and communicate very, very well. I'll give you the example. I was a coach at Great Neck Middle for a number of years. And I remember having a team full of stars, ace pitchers, the shortstop was, all-star everything. No, I could have been a bad coach, right? I could have been a bad coach. So I'm going to take my responsibility. We didn't win. We actually ended up having a losing season. But the following year, a couple of those players returned, but I actually brought on a new team. And what I thought I was doing was building a culture. When I say I thought, because I built a culture of family. At the end of practice, the kids dapped each other. They hugged each other. Yeah. They're like, "I'll see you tomorrow." I built this opportunity. I was like, "Look, when you all are in the cafeteria together, eat lunch together." Mm-hmm. I was like, "Don't sit with each other. Sit with the team." And many of them had the same lunch together. So I would walk in. They would all be at the table together. I had a really good pitcher, a really good catcher, really good shortstop, second base. We had put it together. But the culture aspect is that they wanted to play together. And they wanted to play for each other. Mm-hmm. And I just remember, once we got on a roll, we lost the first game of the year, and we got on a roll after that.
Momentum.
Yeah. But, I mean, they loved playing together, and I loved being with them. And that was just one example. But I'll give you another example, is that when I taught at Green Run High School, there was a yearly softball tournament. And we were so galvanized as a staff, the culture of the staff. Now, I remember I was a student, now I'm a teacher there. We were so galvanized around pouring into our students and loving on each other as teammates and just enjoying each other. We played this tournament once a year. We never practiced, never played together. But for that one day, for 3 years in a row, we played in this tournament. That one day, we brought a team together and we won. Every year. One, because we could communicate with each other very, very effectively. We believed in each other. We loved each other. So we could rip on each other, but we loved each other. And we trusted each other. And that was those four pillars coming together. I was I was amazed that we'd never practiced, never played together, but 3 years in a row, we won that with a very, very similar team. Because of those values and those behaviors that we exhibited in the workday. We wanted to be with each other. Yeah. And that's the same thing, I'm sure, as you played baseball, at the various levels that you've been on. The best teams, I hope, are the ones that you said, I want to be around those people. I just don't want to play baseball with them. I want to hang out with them. I want to understand their lives. I want to be empathetic. I want to be supportive of them. I want to, break bread with them. Mm-hmm. All those things matter when it comes to building a team. And sports was one indicative of that very, very early on for me as a player, as a coach. Even now, I'm aging myself. I play pickleball. Mm-hmm. I love it. Yeah. You have to communicate in pickleball. Yeah. Literally, it's so fast. And if you don't, you're done. Mm-hmm. And so I think the communication aspect is so big. And I'm going to make sure you are a pitcher. Yeah. That communication between the coach and your catcher is everything. When I was coaching, we threw back-to-back no-hitters. Jeremy Bordeaux, John Malbum, and myself. Back-to-back no-hitters. The three of us we were so in sync. Yeah. I remember one time in the middle of this no-hitter, and I was like, we got this no-hitter going on. We got this no-hitter. They looked at me and said, "Hey, this kid disrespected you the last time we played. We got this. Let us call the sequence." And I said, "Okay." They struck him out. Yeah. Communication is everything. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think of that as connection. I love that you mentioned momentum, because I think momentum is something I noticed through sports that I really try to bring into my family and into my friendships and into my business, because I know how easy things feel when you have that momentum.
Yeah.
It's a flow state. People put different words to it. But I can feel when things are out of sync and when there's not momentum. And I think that's where I know there's something that I need to be more curious about and figure out, but not getting too comfortable in the momentum phases. But all of that hard internal work, the win for me, the breakthrough is when I feel that momentum of the team's rowing in the right direction.
Yeah.
Nobody's second guessing themselves. Everybody's here and they see where we're headed. And I just think that feeling of momentum, it's that feeling of like ease and freedom that I think we're all looking for in life.
Yes.
And I feel like I'm so grateful I had sports and it sounds like you are as well, to kind of to feel that initially and say, how can I replicate that feeling of momentum? Because it's so important.
It is. And I think about, as I keep looking at your shirt, the connected mindset. Connection is everything. Human connection. We need it. It is a part of our growth and development. It is a part of our longevity. As we move through life, we want to feel connected. We've seen from an evolutionary perspective, those individuals or those animals who are disconnected die. I mean, literally die. Yeah. The research on Alzheimer's and dementia, right, talks about our community. The more that we are connected, the more that we have these neural connections with people, we live longer. And so being connected from a sports perspective or a communal perspective or whatever increases our longevity, increases our livelihood, increases our happiness, right? We secrete norepinephrine and serotonin and dopamine the more that we're connected with a diverse group of people. It's important. And sports and military and different, it brings together folks from various socioeconomic status, from racial and gender status. Like, think about that. Think about when you played, the folks, where they were from. And it didn't matter. When you stepped across that line, it's about playing ball. And that was one of the greatest joys of my life, stepping across that line and playing with my people or coaching them, because it didn't matter. And I love it. I actually miss that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the best teams or coaches, the best teams I was on, the best coaches that I had, they weren't necessarily the loudest in their voice, but they established unspoken rules where it was you would look at them and you knew how they felt. And I think that's emotional intelligence. Now that I look back on it now, but the teams, most of the time in the minor leagues, a lot of the team didn't speak the same language. So you had, half,
that's right.
Half Portuguese, half Spanish, half, whatever language they were speaking. And it was almost more clear communication than people that speak English and they all speak the same language.
Yeah. You got to figure out, how to communicate. You're creating some little nuances that, hey, he understands or she understands or they understand. Like, we can do this even though we come from different cultures, different backgrounds, different languages. There's a level of communication that when it works, it's going to work really, really well. But you got to get there. It takes time to build.
It does. Yeah. You kind of answered the question of what does connection mean to you a little bit, and we'll get deeper into that. I'm curious for the folks listening in and the show you've had for the past about 8 years. Is there a way that you suggest people, if they feel like they haven't found that revolution or they haven't had that moment of clarity, to go out and ask themselves a few questions that may help them find that revolution for themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I'm hoping is that we all have the ability to set a goal. And as I said earlier, revolution is the action. We all have the ability to set a goal. And I think the question or the answer to what's a revolution stems from, how do I get to this goal? If the goal is to be a better man, what does that actually look like? Is to show up better for my family, to be more emotionally intelligent for my family. The revolution maybe simply is that I need to read this book on what it looks like to be emotionally intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that as humans, we want to ask ourselves, how do I get better? How do I be a better version of myself? And looking at those granular pieces of that then leads us to that. Like, to be a better human means I want to be a better father. What does it mean to be a better father? I want to spend, X amount of hours with my children.
Mm-hmm.
The revolution in that may be I need to cut the number of hours that I'm putting into work because I'm missing time with my children and my partner. That might be, but that's the thing. I start at this really, really high level of what's the goal, find the granularity, and that will help you answer your revolution, and for me, I realized that I was going through a period of time in my life where I was truly unhappy because I was looking at everybody else's needs before my own.
Mm-hmm.
And I said it because I was a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And your body, I say this, I'll personalize this. My body would say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
I don't want to be in this room. But if I leave, or if I say this, or if I do this, it may hurt their feeling. But then I was like, I'm the one suffering over here. And so I had to work through. So the revolution for 2023 was, I'm not going to be a people pleaser. Like, when I have this, when I have this feeling that I don't want to be in a room, or that I need to say something that I think is going to hurt somebody's feelings, or because it's something that needs to be said, say the thing.
Yeah.
And work through the physiological aspect, because the body is saying, this is foreign. This is.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the, again, 100% responsibility and not being a people pleaser, two of the biggest revolutions of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I think we all need a little bit of that in our regimen.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible. Yeah, I love what you're up to. I love what's your revolution. I think that those big, profound questions are something that I gravitate towards personally and professionally as well. And I try to ask that. And going back to when I mentioned one of our past guests asked Greg, what are you too much of? People would say, Greg, you ask too deep questions, or you ask the things you're asking aren't where I want to go.
Yeah.
But the people that saw it and accepted the challenge, those are the best relationships I have, because they said, I know it's uncomfortable for you to ask that question because you're going outside of your comfort zone. I'm going to match that energy and go out of my comfort zone a little bit. And those, I think, where we both get breakthroughs. It's not just them getting a breakthrough or me,
right?
From them answering. It's where we feel alive because we're in that flow state.
I would agree, because I'm thinking through that question that you asked, what am I too much of? Yeah. That's a great question. Yeah. That's a great question. I think I'm too much of being in control. Yeah. If I'm going to answer that question, it's that's a great question. And if you remember the story I told you about my employee, I had to release control. Yeah. Yeah.
That's not easy to do because it makes us feel more uncertain in the uncertain world. So.
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, you're going to drive.
Yeah.
And I've been driving since I was 16. Yeah. Like, I'll come pick you up.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Being able to take a back seat for a little bit. And trust the process. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Trust the process.
Charles, where can folks get in touch with you, contact you? Obviously, check out your show on YouTube and all the platforms.
So you can check out the What's a Revolution show everywhere. Charles at whatsarevolution.com to contact me. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. I do a lot of content on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, with all of the things that I do. We didn't even get a chance to really talk about the investing in the entrepreneurship work that I do, but that's a part of my revolution as well, helping to invest in and scale, high tech, high growth companies. So, and that's a passion and love of mine. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually the senior venture partner and head of programming, chief of staff for 757 Collab. And so you can always find me there at Assembly. If you are in the 757 area, you have a high growth idea, please come check us out, because we're doing really, really great work. Yeah. My partner, Paul Nolde, who's the managing partner of 757 Collab. Our team is amazing. Joe D'Amelio, Sabrina Hamill, Cully Luthra, and Charlie O'Brien are just amazing people to work with. So excited about that work as well.
Absolutely. I love what you guys are doing there. Part of that community, and it's been a huge impact to the companies that I've built. So I appreciate what you guys continue to do and continue to evolve. So one of the ways we like to wrap up the show, and you answered it a little bit, but this show is all about connection and we've talked about it a little bit through this show. When you feel that connection, some people say breakthrough, some people say, I've transitioned into this next state, or I've found my revolution. Getting people to ask themselves the right question to feel that connection, that out of body experience that we feel when we're in our community, we're asking the right questions, and we feel a level of clarity. I'm curious, from everything you've learned, what does the word connection mean and feel like to you today?
Yeah. Connection for me means safety. When I feel connected, I feel safe. And that is the S word, as we say, is not a word that many men will say out loud. Yeah. When I feel connected, I feel safe. And as any human, any animal, they want to find places where they feel safe, that they can release the mask. And particularly men talk about this all the time, releasing the mask, to take the armor off, and that's huge. Being able to just strip it off and be your fullest, most authentic self. And I am fortunate. And some days I get in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm not connected enough. And then my girlfriend will tell me, like, you go out every night. Like, you're doing something different every night. And so I play pool on Tuesday nights with a group of guys. I play pickleball Tuesday and Thursday mornings. I have my fraternity brothers. I have my mother. I have friends that I walk with. If I really looked at my life, I'm really, really well connected. Sometimes I got to get out of my head about the stories. So that's what, connectedness feels like. And forgive me, the second part of the question was
just what does it feel like and mean? And that's that word safety. That's a feeling and a meaning to me.
That's exactly what it feels. And it means safety, and it feels like warm water. Yeah. That's
the
what
release.
It feels like.
Yeah, the release. The release of the armor. I think that we're all looking for that because the world throws different things at us. So I love that safety piece, and I know people are looking for that safety. So I'm glad that they heard that message from you, and with everything you've been through from sports and business and helping people build companies, going through those special experiences in high school that have shaped who you are today, and that feeling of warm water, I think, is something everybody listening in today is looking to feel. So.
Don't get me wrong. There's nothing like jumping into cold water. I was just in Nice, and that water was chilly.
Oh, man.
But the thing about it is, if you stay in long enough, the body will adjust, and that water will feel warm to you. Connection is not easy. It sometimes it feels like jumping into that ice bath. But if you stay long enough with your people, right, that water will become warmer and warmer and warmer. Every Tuesday night when I walk into that pool hall and I see my people, that's warm water. Yeah. Now, when I first walked in, they didn't know me. They were like, who is this dude? But now, 3 years later, I would not change anything. I would not change any Tuesday night with them.
Charles, glad we're connected.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity.
Hey, thank you so much for listening. If you're feeling more connected from this episode, please like, subscribe, and share with someone that you care about. And I'll see you on the next episode of the Connected Mindset Podcast.